All right, welcome to Cybersecurity Workshops, and today we are going to talk about types of users. So we're continuing this series on the introduction of the command line interface, and this is starting module 3. So we've talked a lot about files and directories, how to create them, how to delete them, how to copy them, how to move them, etc. Now we're going to transition from files and directories, and we're going to talk about users and groups. So this is the third module in this course authored by Matthew Vogel at Tidewater Community College. So lesson 1 in module 3 is types of users. So we'll jump in here. So some lesson objectives for this brief chat. Understand the types of users on a Linux system, understand the use of the sudo command, understand the use of the su command, and understand the use of the who am I command. So we're going to learn 3 new commands today. So three types of Linux accounts. There are normal user accounts. These are probably the most common Linux accounts. There are system accounts, and then there are root accounts. Those are also referred to as super user accounts. And the analog on a Windows system is an administrator account. So on Windows, an administrator is an account holder who can do things like install applications and change any and all configurations on the system. Similar in a Linux system, that account is called the root, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So normal user account. A user account is required in order to log on to the system. Okay, so anytime you log on to a Linux system, you're going to log on to a user account. Again, that's very similar to a Windows system. When you log on to a Windows system, there's some name associated with your account. A normal user account is an account without any special privileges. Using a normal user account for everyday system use is a good security practice. So most of your interaction with a Linux system, even if you're an administrator or a root user, most of your interaction is going to be using a normal user account. And the reason for that is because it's more difficult to get yourself into trouble. So what I mean by that is, as a user, you can only have certain negative impact on the system, but if you're the root user, if you have an administrator account, you can accidentally do things that will have system-wide impact and could, you could accidentally delete other people's files, for example, if you're the root user, or you could accidentally delete files on the system that would actually make the system unstable. So that would be bad. So even administrators don't use their administrator accounts for everyday tasks. They use a user account, and then when they need to do an administrative thing, then they switch to an administrative account, and we'll talk about how to do that. So the way you know that you're logged in as a normal user is that your command prompt is going to end with the $sign character. So here I am on my Kali Linux virtual machine in the Virginia Cyber Range, and you'll see that we talked about the format of this prompt in an earlier discussion, but the prompt has my username, so that's one way to know that who I'm logged in as. The username at the beginning, and then the host name. In this case, the host name is Kali, and then there's a colon, and then I have the directory that I'm in, which is the tilde directory right now, which is my home directory /home/student. And then at the very end of the prompt is a $sign, and that tells me that I'm logged in to a user account, not an administrative account. So another type of account are system accounts. On a Linux system, a system account is an account that is used by Linux to run a process, service, or perform a special function. And system accounts are not log-inable. You can't log in as a system account. An example of a system account would be the backup system. Backup system account, which is used to run backups on a Linux system. So depending on the Linux system, there might be a few system accounts, there might be many system accounts. And one way you can see the list of those system accounts is by looking in the Etsy password file. So etc password is a file that contains user account data. And if you look in there, you can see a whole list of accounts on a Linux system, and a lot of those are system accounts. In fact, let's take a quick look at the contents of etc password. So if I were to say cat, I'm going to dump the contents of a file to standard out. I'm going to cat etc password. So this Kali Linux system happens to have a whole bunch of system accounts, and the way you tell the system accounts apart from the user accounts is, for the user accounts, like the student account, the student has as their login shell /bin/bash. So at the end of the actual user accounts, there's a bin bash. That's where the user can log into. The system accounts have something like, a lot of these have user sbin no logon. Okay, so those are accounts that you cannot log into. Those are system accounts. There's one here, the Debian SNMP account. It's /bin/false. That tells you it's a system account. Another thing that tells you whether something is a system account or not is if it has a account number of an account ID number of less than 1,000, then it's either a root account or a system account. So these ones that are 1003, 1002, 1000, these are all user accounts, but the ones that are in the 100 range, those are all system accounts. So those are some ways to tell apart these different types of accounts. The root account is the administrator of the Linux system. So the administrative user, also referred to as the super user. The root, as I mentioned before, has full control of the entire system and can make configuration changes. Using the root account for normal everyday system is dangerous because any program launched by the root user will have root level privileges, and also anything that the root user does can affect all system users, not just the root user. So we don't like administrators to use the root account to do day-to-day things on a Linux system. When you're logged in as the root user, your command will end in a hashtag. We call that a hashtag nowadays, I guess. In the old days, we'd call that a number sign or a sharp. Computer scientists like to call this a sharp. Sometimes nowadays you hear it referred to as a hashtag, but when you're the root user, you'll be able to recognize that easily because you'll have that symbol at the end of your prompt. Okay, so let's look at some commands related to these different types of accounts. Sudo command, as a normal Linux system user, you may occasionally have to elevate your privileges. You may have to become the root user. And in order to do that, you use this command called sudo. And sudo stands for super user, SU, super user do. So I'm saying I want to do the next command as the super user. So when you use the sudo command, that will give you root level permissions to run that one individual command. Now it's important to note that not every user can use the sudo command, right? You have to have some special privileges to use the sudo command. Now, the way to determine whether you are able to use the sudo command or not, well, you can just try it. You can do sudo and then a command name and see if it lets you do it or not. Another way to tell whether you can do this, whether you can use the sudo command or not, is to look at the groups that you're in. So I'm going to show you this command groups, and we're going to talk more about the groups command later on in this module. But when I type in groups, this shows me what groups I'm a part of, what groups my user account are a part of on this system. And you see I'm in the student group, so every user has a group with their own with the same name as their username by default. Now I could remove that group from me if I wanted to, but as the student user, that group was created by default. And I could add other people to that group so that we have shared permissions to do things in the student group. The other group that I'm in here, the other group that's listed is the sudo group. And so people who are in the sudo group can use the sudo command, and only an administrative user can add somebody to the sudo group. So if an administrator created my account on this system and they did not add me to the sudoers group, then I would not be able to use the sudo command. So when you use the sudo command, you have to provide your password, not the root password, but your own password. And any files created using the sudo command will be owned by the root user. Remember, when you do something using sudo, you're acting on behalf of the root user. So here, this example shows that we did sudo touch root file, and then it asked for the student password, and then the root file was created. But if I do an ls-l, I see that the owner of that file is root. So So let's try that. If I did something like this, if I said touch my file, and then I did an ls-l, I see that my file is there. The owner is student because I didn't do that as the sudo, I did that as the student account. But if I do sudo touch root file, whoops. Now there's this thing here called root file, and the owner is root and the group owner is root. So I did that as the administrative user. Okay, here's the next command we're going to talk about. su. There may be times when you want to switch over to the root account for a period of time to perform certain configuration tasks. So with the sudo command, I can do that one command. Then if I can do something else, I have to use sudo again with another command, sudo again with another command. But if I want to do several things as the root user, then I might want to just switch myself into the root account. And the su command, su stands for switch user. I can actually switch user, if I have the proper permissions, I can switch user into any other account, any other log-onable account user. So I could switch to one of the other normal user accounts. If I do su with no account name after it, then the default is to switch into the root account. So here's an example of using su to switch to the root account. And so here's I'm at the student login prompt, and I type in su, and then it's going to ask me for the root password. And now I can see that I am the root account, and the prompt changes to the sharp symbol. So we'll try that. Su password. Okay, so now I'm logged in as root. I have the root at Cali, and I'm in the home student directory. I don't have the tilde there now because I'm not, that's not my home directory. I'm root now. So home student is not my home directory. Remember, the home directory for the root user is the /root directory. So if I were to do a cd tilde, it would take me to /root. And then when I'm done being the root user, I type exit, and I'm switched back to my user account. So exit takes me back. Another way to log into the root account is to use the sudo bash command. So bash is the program that runs the shell, and I can do sudo bash, and that's also gonna switch me to the root user. So if I say sudo bash, remember, the sudo command is going to run a command as root, and when I run bash, the bash is the shell command, so it's going to open a shell for me as root. So this behaves almost identically to using the su command. And then same when I'm done, I type exit. Okay, and the final command we're going to look at today is who am I? So who am I tells you who you're logged in as, and you know, if you're a regular account user and you just use, you know, a single user account and the root account, then you know you might always know who you are, who you're logged in as. But if you tend to log into different systems using a different account names for different purposes, then sometimes being able to use this who am I command is helpful. So here I am logged in as a student. If I say who am I see I'm student. If I say SU, put in the root password. If I say who am I, now I'm root. And if I exit, I can do who am I again, and now I'm back to being student. Okay, so that's pretty much all you need to know about the different types of user accounts, and it's also helpful to know how to become root when you need to become root, and we'll do more of that later on in this course. So thanks for joining me, and I would encourage you now to jump into the lab associated with this discussion. So thanks.